Hey there guys, how you doing? So I'm back. This is the first video that will now be posted every 2 weeks instead of every week. And that's just because, as I talked about in my video on my Instagram, that I just need a little bit more time for self-care throughout my week, and as well as just more time to be able to put into the videos. And I realized this while actually kind of looking back on my first series and realizing there's a couple of questions I want to answer that were kind of left out, or topics that I want to spend a little bit more time on that didn't get enough kind of spotlight, I think, in the coming out series, because it is such like a hard thing to put a story this important to me into like these like videos where you break them down into like 15 to 20 minutes. Even though they're still 15 to 20 minutes, they're not enough to sometimes get all of the information in. So those videos, like the coming out series that I posted, were a little bit more factual. You hear all the facts. And so also kind of going back and talking a little bit about the emotions behind the facts, and then talking a little bit about how it's been since being visible, because that's kind of cool. So the first thing I want to talk about is in the video 1, the coming out series, the summer before, I talk a lot about self-hate and not being able to accept myself. And while it's a topic I think a lot of people do resonate with, is not being able to fully accept yourself, I never really got into it, and it's something that I do want to get into because it was kind of a unique thing of, it was so hard for me to actually accept myself, to get to that point of saying it's okay to be me. And I've talked about conversion therapy a little bit and how that affects the way that I see myself to a certain extent, but there's a whole nother side of it that I kind of left out because it's a little bit hard to talk about. But in the goal of being, 100% real with you guys, I have to be real with the parts of my journey that were a little bit tougher to talk about, things that are a little bit tougher to, say now. But diving into it, we're gonna dive into the self-hate aspect of that first video and explain that deeper. And so that self-hate started when I was really young. And it started because, ever since I was 3, I've been dressing in a different way. I've been dressing as a boy, been acting a little bit more like a boy. And so people always kind of looked at me and were like, oh, Casey's gonna be gay when she grows up. And it bugged me so much when I was younger. And it's something that happened all the time. My mom's friends thought I was gonna be gay. My sister's friends, when I got into high school, out of purely good intent, would still ask her what's going on with Casey? Is she gay? And even though it was out of good intent, it created this rage inside me, this pissed off person being stop telling me who I am. I don't even fucking know it yet, but I know it's not that. And I did always kind of know I wasn't gay, but I did know there was something up. So there was even more of okay, I really, really don't like it when people just assume that I'm gonna grow up and be gay. And so it actually kind of, in a weird sense, and it's so hard to kind of go back and say, is that it created a sense of homophobia, and what I didn't know at the time, transphobia, inside myself. And it wasn't directed towards anybody else. I was so cool with anybody else being gay, but I wasn't cool with myself being gay. And even though at the time I didn't know it was actually trans, it was the only thing I wanted to be was straight, because so many people had told me that I was going to be differently, and I was fuck you guys. I don't know what I am, but I don't want to be what you told me I was going to grow up and be. And there's this little rebel in me, as well as just getting so tired of hearing it so often, created this really struggle in my head of, on one side, kind of really hating myself for just knowing I'm different, knowing that I'm not straight, because I just desperately, when I was younger, just wanted to be straight and normal. I didn't want to have more in my story. I just wanted to be normal. And then balancing that with, okay, I know something's wrong. I know I'm not really normal. Not to say I'm not normal, but at the time that's what I was thinking, is that I know I'm not exactly the average person, and I know something needs to happen, but I'm struggling so hard to even accept that part of myself, because I didn't want that to be true. For a really long time, I didn't want that to be true. And so that self-hate, that battle, is a part of my journey that did lead me to being more suicidal. That's a part of my journey that made it so hard to fathom opening up to other people, because it's a weird concept to think about, asking for acceptance, or expecting these people to accept you when I didn't even accept myself fully, or really at all, especially in the beginning. And so some of the meanest comments that were ever told to me, honestly, were told to me by myself. And that's like it's a fucked up thing. And so, I don't know if I should be swearing this much. Okay, but I don't know, it's just like, when I think about it, looking back, it is kind of hard not to say that it was pretty messed up. And it's how I feel, and for a really long time it was like, oh, like I'm so ashamed that I even ever felt this way, because like it's just like, like now you grow up and like you're not supposed to be homophobic, you're not supposed to be transphobic, everybody's allowed to be who they want to be. And like I said, I was so cool with anybody else being who they wanted to be, but I wasn't cool with myself. So it's like, it was always something I was so ashamed of too, and so like it was a really hard thing to overcome, because I didn't want to talk about it to anybody. I didn't want to admit all these feelings I was having, because I was ashamed I was even having these feelings, and then I was ashamed of myself, and it was like a big pile of not being able to accept what was going on in my life, and this created such a deep self-hatred. One that led me to not open up to people, one that led me to close myself off, one that led me to really isolate myself, because I didn't think anybody else would ever understand those feelings of being this person, but also kind of having a homophobia to it, and like transphobia to it. And it's still, even to this day, kind of like a little bit hard to talk about, because it's something where I preach being positive, I preach accepting everybody, and the truth is, part of my journey was like, it was so hard to accept myself for these same facts that I'm asking other people to accept me for. And so that's going deeper into my self-hate. And why I specifically like wanted to go deeper into this is because I don't actually think I'm alone in this. Through culture, through society, and in some cases through like religion and just like family, you're taught that being gay, being part of the LGBT plus community is wrong. A lot of the time people grow up thinking that those people are freaks, that those people are wrong, that those people shouldn't be the way they are, or that you can unlearn these ways. And there's a bunch of things that we're taught as kids, and even though it's maybe not directly taught to you, you pick it up through society. And so I don't think I'm the only person that's gone through this process of being part of the LGBT community, but really having a really, really hard time not just figuring out who I was, but accepting who I was once I did. And so I wanted to open this up so that, if you are in a place kind of similar to where I was, that like, you're not alone. It's a really twisted and complicated feeling and emotion to process, but it's one that, isolating yourself can make it so much more intense. And I feel like people isolate themselves because it's hard to talk about, like firsthand. It's hard to open up and say I had these feelings. And so I wanted to do it to say, there's one other person that's felt these ways, and it's complicated, and it will take some time, but you can outgrow these feelings. But it kind of starts with reaching out and being able to talk about them, being able to talk about them openly, and not being afraid that everybody's just gonna be like mad at you or judge you for having these feelings. So I want to be another person saying that, if you're like this, I've been there, and it's gonna get better, and it's okay. Like, reach out to those people around you, express how you're feeling, explain that you're complicated, and it helps with the growth. And I feel like a lot of the time we do talk about, self-hate and it being hard to accept ourselves, and then we kind of just leave it on the surface because it's a little bit of a hard topic to talk about, and that still leaves a lot of ambiguity and a lot of things where it's like people still struggle with accepting themselves because they don't see people being visibly accepting these flaws that they're stressing about. So keeping all that in mind, I really did want to open up about this, even though it's difficult, even though I'm a little hesitant, even though I still, in the back of my mind, am not actually worried about being judged, but there's that voice in the back of my head that is still a little bit people are going to judge you, because it's something that I don't even see nowadays, is that anybody else really talk about this type of homophobia and transphobia that can form inside yourself, let alone dealing with it with other people. So just kind of keeping in sights, wanting to educate, wanting to be a light, wanting to help people through their transition. I wanted to be as honest as I could about mine, and that's to be as brutally honest as I can. Is that saying that getting over that self-hate, working through, really just for a long time just wanting to be normal, just wanting to be a straight cisgender dude was challenging, and it's something I want to open up about so that people don't feel the need to isolate themselves. So that is the number one thing I wanted to go back and touch base on, and that's from the first coming out video. If you're a little bit lost because you didn't get to check that out, it is on my channel, so you kind of know what I'm talking about. So, also, I mentioned in that video a movie that the plot had a really big impact on me for my options. One of my options was to like kind of run away and like get all the surgeries done, and I said that I had based it off of a movie that had nothing to do with my journey or really being trans at all, and I found it. After I made the video, I really started thinking. I was like, man, it's bugging me. Like, I loved this movie, one. Two, like, I kind of like thinking back on how actually impactful it was, I kind of want to rewatch it. And so, I found it. The movie's called Speed Racer. If any of you guys want to watch it, it's from 2008, Speed Racer. You can go check it out. I actually haven't gotten around to rewatching it, but I'm really looking forward to rewatching it and like looking back and seeing like if it was like kind of like really easy to see how I made those connections, or if like I really kind of took a stretch with something that was something I just maybe needed at the time. So I am gonna also watch that movie, but if you want to watch it as well, it's called Speed Racer. So yeah, that was another one. Then kind of going into my family video, coming out to my family, a question that did get asked to me is that I only talk about my stepdad in this video. I talk about all my important family, and I mention my stepdad a lot, but I don't mention my dad. And for the people that know me, that's not confusing, but I can see that as this is a YouTube channel and as there's a bunch of people that don't personally know me watching this, I want to go back and actually take a time to answer that question for everybody. And that answer is actually my biological dad passed away when I was 3 months old, and my stepdad has been my dad ever since I was 1. And so he is... like, I don't really call him my stepdad when we're talking, or in a family setting, he is just my dad. But yeah, I wanted to go back and talk about it. It's not that I didn't talk about my biological dad because he's unaccepting and a jerk or anything. It's just that he actually hasn't been, you know, an active part in my transition at all, as he passed away when I was way before I even started transitioning. And so that's even more so like why when I talk about how amazing my mom is, like, it's a little bit, to me, even farther, because she did a lot of this without like kind of the guidance and help of someone else trying to help her figure it out for a bit. And so, yeah. So I just wanted to kind of go back and be, you know, touch on that, just so there wasn't like an unanswered question or confusion. And yeah, so my stepdad is pretty much my dad, but in terms of why I didn't talk about my biological dad, it's just because he wasn't really a part of the picture of my transition. And so, the kind of last question I wanted to talk about in this video, and like the kind of unanswered questions, and this is actually something that my sister brought up to me when we were kind of talking about the videos, and it's something that I think is really interesting because as a trans person, this question didn't pop into my head as anything that was left unanswered, but as a person looking in, it was. And that question was, you know, why was I in so much of a rush when you know, talking about kind of the school episode where like a week after I told my family, I kind of worked into trying to work with my school and like kind of quickly started, you know, moving forward with it. And she asked me, you know, why were you in such a rush? And to me, I didn't even stop to think about answering that. So I am going to stop and answer that today. And so, you know, I feel like for the people that are trans or part of the community watching this may seem a little bit self-explanatory, but for the people not, I want to just go over it. And it's that, you know, that rush comes from all of a sudden, there was like a light. There was a light at the end of the tunnel where, you know, it wasn't just depression, it wasn't just my body's gonna suck forever, I'm gonna hate my life forever. There was that opportunity to become something else, that opportunity to grow, that opportunity to transition, that opportunity to feel, to like escape that living hell that I was waking up in every day. And so that rush came from just the strive to get out of this situation I was in, get out of this intense self-hate I was in, get out of this body that I can't stand looking in the mirror of. And that's like, even like something, another big part of the rush is like, you know, I wanted to get this transition through because at a really young age, I hated my body, like absolutely hated it. And it's not an uncommon thing you actually hear within trans people is that they struggle to even look in the mirror. And when I was younger, I struggled to look in the mirror. I hated showering. I'd turn the lights off when I showered because I didn't want to look in the mirror. I would avoid looking in the mirror at all costs, and I even actually got the nickname Hulk from my friends at one point, because I'd go and I'd punch glass and I'd punch mirror and I'd punch walls like it was nothing, but that all being able to do that came from actually quite often punching mirrors, because I couldn't stand looking at myself. And so when you ask, or if it goes across your mind like why it's such a rush when I did figure out about the transition, it's because I was just like, I can't stress that it feels like a living hell before I figured out what transgender was and what I could do. Like, it really just felt like a living hell. So as soon as I figured out that there was a process, and I didn't know what that process to look like, step by step, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, and I knew it was going to take a while, but it was a process I could start to get out of these feelings I was feeling, to get out of feeling so shitty about myself. And start to become, this person that like I was in my head, that I dreamed about. And also at that age I slept a lot, because in my head I could be this person, and I could be this cool dude, and it was like I could kind of control my dreams. And I can't actually control your dreams, but like I could control the person I was in my dreams, and it was so much better than reality. And so like I was sleeping a lot, and so as soon as like it actually was like somewhat fathomable that like my dream, when I dream about like that guy, I can work towards being that guy. I wanted to start that as soon as I could. And so while it was super scary, I never really hesitated to like open up to my therapist. I was always super open with them, and I never hesitated, I did hesitate with my coming out process, as I've said. It didn't actually, ever really fathom like not coming out to people or like holding it off, because I'm such a person that's like, when I want something, I do it now. And with the transition alone, that became very complicated. But in the start, to like really get going, it was right out of the gates, because I am that person. Like I said, there was this option of getting out of a living hell, like escaping this it was just a really bad place. Like, and so, seeing it out, it was just like, I gotta go for it. I gotta get that done as soon as I can. So yeah, that's talking about why, it was such a rush. And I think a lot of like the people, like I said, in the LGBT community, or, specifically trans people, they understand that rush. They understand that living hell, and they understand, you can't actually rush the process, but like that want to rush and that want to get on top of things and do things as soon as you can, so that you can get on with the process and go further down your transition, because even in the fastest process, it does still take years. So yeah, I just want to talk about that. And like I said, if you are part of the community, you probably understand it and can relate. But for the people that don't really know, yeah, I just wanted to stop and touch base, because it was a question, and I think a really valid question that was brought up, to help educate. So those are the main questions that, like, while reviewing my own videos, I was like, oh, I want to go back and I want to re-answer those. But if you have any other questions, I open up a questionnaire every single week on my Instagram, just talking about anything that you guys want to know about. So like, if there's anything that feels left out in the video, or unanswered questions, that like I didn't even get back to in this video, go ahead and ask me on my Instagram, and I can get to them, and you guys can get some answers. So yeah, so those are my unanswered questions, and I know this is kind of like an emotional recap, but I think it touches both, like emotional recap and unanswered questions. And this last little thing that I wanted to just touch base on in this video is talking about how it's been since being this visible. And it's been really interesting. I do have to say interesting because, I actually, to get to this point, when I posted my first video, I had it recorded for a bit, and on Pride, being just so overwhelmed by with all the love, I was like, fuck it, I'm posting it. And was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna start. And well, I think it's still very aware that I'm working out and still learning what to do. I have to say this has been overwhelming how amazing it's actually been. It hasn't changed my day-to-day life, I don't really think. I mean, I am still who I am, but I get to be completely proud of who I am, and I don't have to hide any part of who I am. And why I did want to just, even though it's so early, take a second to talk about this, is because I actually want to take a second to thank you. Thank you to everybody that's watching these videos, everybody that's also, I'm creating this light and working towards education, also allowing me to learn how to be so happy and proud with me by just allowing me to share my story. So thank you seriously from the bottom of my heart for all the support throughout the videos and sticking with me through all the changes of posts and getting this channel worked out. I can't thank you enough because this experience has been so eye-opening for me, and I can't wait to continue sharing my story. And well, it's bizarre sometimes, the feeling that comes with it, just because sometimes I don't realize things that like other people didn't know about my story, even really close to me. Like my mom didn't know how close I was to suicide, even though she was a big person that saved me from it. And so like it's been kind of interesting, the conversations that have come since being more open about being actually to get closer with some of like the people that were already close in my life by allowing them to even understand these deeper parts of me. And that's something that I've really liked from this. And overall, I'm just like, I've really just been blown away by how supportive and happy actually this really makes me doing these videos make me feel. And so even though it's early in this channel, I want to take a second to just say thank you so much. Like, really, thank you for allowing me to share my story. So that is all for this video. If there's any, like I said, if there's any questions you guys have, you can go to my Instagram, you can ask them on my weekly questionnaire. But that's it for this video. Thank you again so much. Like I said, I'm so grateful. Remember to like down below and subscribe, and if you're interested in following my Instagram, catching up with the journey and asking some questions on this questionnaire, my Instagram will also be in the link just down below. So yeah, that's it for now. Like always, all love, guys. Easy.